It was a soft Sunday morning, the kind of morning that smells like toast and rain. I remember the sound of church bells faintly echoing from down the street, the hum of my old refrigerator, and the way my hands trembled just a little as I buttoned my blouse. Sundays were always family days in our home. My son Daniel would cook, I'd bring dessert, and his longtime girlfriend Maya would set the table, humming to herself like a songbird trying to be polite. That morning felt no different, until it was. I'd baked an apple pie, the same recipe Daniel loved as a boy. I remember thinking how grown he looked the last time I saw him. 32, tall like his father, a bit more serious than before. Maya had been sweet, at least on the surface. Polite smiles, soft-spoken words, but something about her eyes. I never could read them. I carried the pie to the car, humming quietly to calm myself. My husband, God rest his soul, used to say I hummed whenever I was nervous. I didn't realize how right he was until that day. When I pulled into their driveway, there were too many cars. Fancy ones I didn't recognize. I frowned, checking the house number like I might have driven to the wrong place. But no, there it was, the little blue porch Daniel had painted himself. The front door was slightly open. Laughter spilled out, the easy kind of laughter that makes you feel like an outsider. I knocked, but no one heard. So I pushed the door gently and stepped inside. That's when everything went silent. There must have been 20 people, faces I didn't know, all dressed nicely, like for a small reception. And in the middle of it all stood Daniel and Maya, hand in hand, with matching rings glinting in the afternoon light. Before I could even speak, Maya turned to me, radiant and composed, and said with a voice that carried through the whole room, "Oh, everyone, this is Daniel's mother. Grandma, meet everyone." It was that word, grandma, that did it. The air left my chest. Slow and heavy, the guests turned, smiling politely, unaware that I was hearing those words for the first time, unaware that my only son had gotten married. And I was the last to know. Daniel's smile faltered when he saw my face. He rushed forward, arms open, murmuring, "Mom, I was going to tell you. It just happened fast." I looked at him, trying to find my voice. "You got married yesterday?" He nodded, shame flickering in his eyes. "It was small, just the two of us. We wanted to surprise you." "Surprise me?" I repeated softly, setting the pie down on the counter like it might shatter between my hands. Maya slipped her hand through his arm, the picture of grace. "We didn't want to stress you, Mom," she said sweetly. "You've been through so much lately. We thought we'd make it simple." I forced a smile, the polite, trembling kind that hides a storm. "Simple," I said. "Yes, that's thoughtful," but inside, something cracked. All those years I'd imagined helping Daniel plan his wedding, choosing a suit, pinning a boutonniere to his jacket, crying when he said I do, all gone. Replaced with this, a living room full of strangers and the smell of catered food that wasn't mine. I sat through that lunch like a ghost at my own funeral. People chatted around me, glasses clinked. Someone toasted to new beginnings. Every few minutes, someone called me grandma, as if repeating the word might make it real. Daniel tried to act normal, but his eyes kept flickering toward me, searching for forgiveness he hadn't earned yet. And Maya, she floated around the room like she'd always belonged there, directing the caterers, laughing with Daniel's colleagues, even correcting one of the older guests about our family business. That caught my attention. Our family business, I repeated when she passed by me, a glass of champagne in her hand. She smiled brightly. "Yes, the bakery. Daniel mentioned how much your late husband built it up. I think it's wonderful that it's all staying in the family. He and I were just discussing how to modernize things, branding, online sales, maybe even a rebrand under our name." "Our name?" I swallowed hard. "It's still under my name, Maya. I own it." Her smile didn't falter. "Of course, but Daniel said you were thinking of retiring soon. Maybe I could help take some of that off your plate." It was a small thing, a suggestion, on the surface, but I'd lived long enough to know when someone's testing the waters. That night, when I got home, I couldn't eat. The pie I'd baked sat untouched on my kitchen counter, the scent of cinnamon turning bitter in the quiet house. I sat in my husband's old chair, tracing the edge of his wedding ring that I still wore on a chain around my neck. "You'd have hated this," I whispered to the empty room. "You'd have told him this isn't how family works." But Daniel wasn't that little boy anymore. He wasn't the child who used to help me knead dough in the kitchen or bring me coffee on Mother's Day. He was a man now, a man with secrets. And Maya, she wasn't what she seemed. I felt it deep in my bones. The way she'd avoided my eyes that morning, the way she spoke about our family's bakery like it was already hers. I decided then that something wasn't right, and I was going to find out what it was. The next day, I visited the bakery early. The smell of yeast and sugar greeted me like an old friend. My employees, most of them had been with me for years, looked uncomfortable. I noticed whispers, glances. Finally, my cashier, Lena, took me aside. Mrs. Cole, she said carefully, Maya was here yesterday. She said she's helping you now. With finances, my stomach tightened. Did she? I asked, keeping my tone even. Yes, ma'am. She said she's Daniel's wife now, and that means she's family. She asked for the business account numbers. I told her I'd wait for your approval. I nodded slowly, forcing a smile. You did right, Lena, thank you. When she walked away, I stood in the middle of that bakery, the same place my husband and I built from nothing, and realized this wasn't just a new marriage. It was a takeover, and I wasn't going to let it happen quietly. I didn't sleep much that week. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see Daniel's awkward smile and Maya's calm, practiced one. The difference between them was simple. Daniel had guilt. Maya had confidence. She reminded me of people who smile while taking something that isn't theirs, polite, pleasant, and utterly sure they'll get away with it. Still, I told myself not to overthink. Maybe she was just eager. Maybe this was her way of fitting in. But the feeling, that low, gnawing sense that something was off, it wouldn't leave me alone. On Wednesday afternoon, Daniel stopped by the house. He looked tired, unshaven, in a wrinkled shirt. For a moment, I saw the boy I used to worry over. The one who stayed up late studying, who never knew how to hide his emotions. Hey, Mom, he said, forcing a smile. Maya sent over some food. He placed the containers on the counter neat, labeled, the kind of thing she'd do for show. I poured him coffee, the way I always did, and sat across from him at the kitchen table that still had his childhood scratches on it. Why didn't you tell me? I asked softly. About the wedding, he sighed, rubbing his temple. It wasn't supposed to be like that. We planned to tell you, but it happened fast. Her mom was sick. We just wanted something small. Her mom? I interrupted. I thought her parents lived out of state. He blinked, then looked away. They do. She went to see her mom a while ago. She didn't tell you? No, I said slowly. She didn't. He looked uneasy, sipping his coffee. Mom, please don't read into everything. Maya's good to me. She's been through a lot. She wants to feel secure. I wanted to believe him. But his words, feel secure, stuck in my mind like a burr under the skin. Secure in what? His love, our name, the business my husband and I had built from nothing but sleepless nights and cracked hands. Daniel, I said carefully, does she ever talk about the bakery? He smiled faintly. She's got ideas. She's smart, Mom. She thinks we can expand, reach more people. She believes in what Dad started. I looked down at my coffee. Believing in something is good. Owning it before you've earned it, that's different. He frowned, defensive. Mom, don't worry. I cut him off gently. I'm not accusing her of anything. Just be careful who you give keys to. He sighed, frustrated. She's my wife. I trust her. I nodded, though my heart didn't. That weekend, I stopped by their house unannounced. I told myself I was just dropping off some old family photos for Maya. A gesture of goodwill. But the truth was, I wanted to see her. She opened the door in a crisp white blouse and jeans, her hair perfectly styled. Behind her, the living room had changed. My son's old family photos were gone. New frames lined the mantel, mostly pictures of the two of them, and a few of a little boy, a boy I didn't recognize. He looked about 4. Curly hair, a smile too bright to forget. Oh, Maya said quickly, noticing my eyes drift to the photos. That's my nephew, I smiled faintly. He looks a lot like you. Her expression froze for just a second before she laughed softly. I guess so. I followed her into the kitchen, pretending not to notice the subtle nervousness in her voice. Daniel's at the bakery? I asked, taking a seat. Yes, he had some inventory issues to handle. She busied herself with teacups, avoiding my eyes. I was just organizing things here, trying to make this place feel like home. Do you mind if I use the restroom? Of course, down the hall. I walked slowly, my hand grazing the walls, studying the details. A new scent of lavender, a family calendar with birthdays marked. One name stood out on the next week's square. Ethan, 5th birthday. I stopped. Ethan. When I returned to the kitchen, she was pretending to check her phone. Is your nephew visiting soon? I asked casually, her eyes flicked up. Why do you ask? Oh, I saw his name on your calendar. Ethan, 5th birthday. Thought maybe he'd be coming over. A pause. Then she smiled too brightly. Oh yes. Just a reminder to call him. He lives with my sister. I nodded, holding her gaze a second longer than polite. She looked away first. That night, I couldn't shake it. The boy in the picture, the dates, the way she'd stiffened, and something else. Maya didn't have a sister. I remembered Daniel mentioning once that she was an only child. So who was Ethan? The next morning, I drove to the bakery again. Lena met me at the door, looking anxious. Mrs. Cole, she whispered, Maya was here again. She brought a man this time, said he was from some consulting firm. They were asking questions about ownership papers and company shares. My heart dropped. Did she take anything? No, I told her I didn't have access without your authorization. She said she'd come back with Daniel. I forced a calm smile, but inside my pulse was pounding. Thank you, Lena, you did exactly right. I drove home slowly, the radio off, my mind spinning. By the time I parked, my hands were trembling on the steering wheel. I opened my late husband's old file cabinet, the one we'd kept locked for years. Inside were the bakery's original documents, the deed, the share certificates, our business registration. All in my name. And then I noticed something new. A thin manila envelope with Daniel's handwriting, to be discussed with Maya. I opened it carefully. Inside was a drafted transfer document, a share transfer, 50% of the bakery, to be moved from me to Daniel and his legal spouse, Maya Cole. My breath caught. He'd been planning it. They both had. I sank into my chair, the papers trembling in my hand. I'd never thought my own child would try to take something his father and I bled for. But there it was in black ink. That night, I sat at my kitchen table again, the old clock ticking above me, echoing the pulse in my ears. This wasn't just about a wedding. It wasn't about love. This was about control, about money, about a woman who wanted more than a ring, and I knew then, I needed to find out exactly who Maya really was. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. I sat by the window, watching the streetlights fade as the first light crept through the curtains. There's something cruel about mornings after heartbreak, when the world still looks the same. But you're not the same person you were when you went to bed. I used to tell Daniel that truth always finds its way out. Now I was praying that for once, it wouldn't, because the truth I was uncovering could break my son's heart. I started quietly. First, I called an old friend, Miriam, who worked at the county clerk's office. We'd shared coffee and laughter for years, back when our husbands were still alive. Miriam, I said softly over the phone, I need a favor. Can you check if there's any record of a child under the name Ethan, connected to a woman named Maya Collins? She hesitated. That's Daniel's wife, right? Yes. A pause. I could hear her typing. Then silence. Finally, she spoke, her voice careful. Ethan Collins. Born May 5, 2020. Mother, Maya Collins. Father not listed. The room went quiet. My fingers tightened around the phone. Miriam, I whispered, do you have an address? She read it out, and it was the same apartment Maya had lived in before marrying Daniel. So, Ethan wasn't a nephew. He was her son, and Daniel didn't know. I sat there, shaking, my heart caught between anger and heartbreak. Anger, because my son had been deceived. Heartbreak, because somewhere in all this mess was a little boy who didn't ask for any of it. That afternoon, I drove to their house again. Daniel's car was in the driveway, but Maya's wasn't. I rang the doorbell, trying to steady my breath. Daniel opened the door, surprised. Mom, hey, what brings you? We need to talk, I said quietly. He led me inside. The house smelled faintly of vanilla and something floral, Maya's scent. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same place where I'd seen that picture of Ethan. Daniel, I began carefully. I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Do you know a boy named Ethan? He blinked. Ethan. No, I don't think so. Why? I studied his face, pure confusion. Maya said he's her nephew. He shrugged. Yeah, I've seen pictures. Cute kid. She talks about him sometimes. She lied, I said softly. He's her son. He froze. What? She had a child before she met you. She never told you. His expression shifted. Disbelief, then anger, then something like fear. That's not possible, he said, shaking his head. Maya would never. I slid a folded copy of the birth record across the table. Miriam had sent me a scanned copy. He stared at it for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice broke. She said she didn't have family, that she'd been alone since college. He pushed away from the table, pacing. Why would she lie? Why wouldn't she tell me? Because she wanted a new start, I said quietly. And maybe she thought you wouldn't marry her if you knew. He ran a hand through his hair, trembling. Oh God. Mom, are you sure? I nodded. I wish I wasn't. He sank into a chair, his face pale. She's been talking about putting the bakery under both our names. She said it would make things simpler for taxes. I thought she was just helping. I looked at him, my son, so trusting, so loyal. The same boy who used to build sandcastles and cry when they washed away. Now, the castle was his life, and Maya had built her foundation inside it. We sat in silence for a while. Then Daniel stood abruptly. I need to talk to her, not like this, I warned. She'll twist it. Wait until you have everything. but he was already at the door, his face hard with betrayal. That evening, the phone rang. When I answered, it wasn't Daniel. It was Maya. Her voice was cold, sharp, not the sweet politeness she used around me before. Mrs. Cole, she said, I know you've been digging into my past. My throat tightened. Then you know why. You had no right, she snapped. Whatever you think you found, it doesn't change the fact that Daniel loves me. Does he love you? I asked quietly. Or the version you made up for him? Silence. Then her tone dropped lower. You think you can scare me with your little discoveries? You forget something. Daniel's not a boy anymore. He makes his own choices. And soon enough, our family business will reflect that. Her words sliced through the phone. Don't threaten me, Maya, I said. Because the truth has a way of walking in, even when you lock the door. She laughed softly. Then let's see who opens it first. And she hung up. The next few days were chaos. Daniel moved out temporarily, saying he needed space. Maya stayed in the house, refusing to leave, pretending nothing had happened. Then one morning, I got a call from the bakery accountant. Mrs. Cole, he said hesitantly. I just wanted to confirm, did you authorize a transfer of business assets to Mrs. Maya Cole? My blood ran cold. Double quotes. No, absolutely not. She came in yesterday, he said you'd given verbal approval. Had Daniel with her? I felt the air leave my lungs. Daniel signed, yes ma'am, half the assets, but she left before final processing. I held it because the signatures looked pressured. I drove there immediately. The papers were still on his desk. I saw Daniel's signature, shaky, uncertain. My son had signed his trust away. I called him. He didn't answer. When he finally showed up that night, he looked broken. She told me it was just a formality, he whispered. That you already agreed? That it was to simplify the taxes. I didn't think. Oh, Daniel. I took his face in my hands. She played you. Tears welled in his eyes. I don't know who she is anymore. Yes, you do, I said quietly. You just didn't want to see it. The next morning, Maya came to my house. Uninvited, she walked in like she owned the place, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Mrs. Cole, she said, smiling thinly. I thought we could settle this like adults. There's nothing to settle, I said. You lied, you manipulated, and you tried to steal what you didn't earn. Her smile faltered. I did what I had to do. You think it's easy raising a child alone? You think I had choices? Her voice cracked for the first time. Anger mixed with something raw, almost painful. I wanted stability, she said. I wanted someone who wouldn't leave, so you trapped my son. I asked quietly. I gave him love, she shot back. Something you never did. You control him like he's still a child. Her words stung, because maybe there was a sliver of truth. But manipulation isn't love. And lies aren't protection. You can hate me all you want, I said, but this ends now. The transfer's void. And if you ever step foot in that bakery again, you'll have a lawyer waiting for you. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned, her voice trembling. You'll regret this. I already do, I whispered. That was the last time I saw her. 2 weeks later, Daniel filed for annulment. The truth came out. Her hidden child, her false identity, her attempt to seize control of our business. She left town quietly, taking Ethan with her. Daniel stayed with me for a while. Broken and silent. Some nights I'd hear him crying in his old room, the same way he used to when he was little, only now. I couldn't fix it with lullabies or warm milk. I'd just sit outside his door, praying he'd find peace, because betrayal doesn't just break your heart, it rearranges it. And no matter how much you love someone, you can't shield them from the lessons they're meant to learn. Still, I made a silent promise to myself. I would not let this bitterness define us. One day, when the time was right, I'd tell him something I'd learned the hard way. That sometimes, losing what you thought was love is the only way to make room for the real thing. Time is a strange thing. It doesn't heal everything, but it does make the pain softer around the edges, like a stone that's been tumbled by the sea until it's smooth enough to hold again. A few months passed after the annulment. The house was quieter now. Daniel had moved back in temporarily, helping me with the bakery. He looked thinner, older somehow. His smile didn't reach his eyes anymore, but at least he was smiling again. The first morning he came back to work, I watched him from the counter. He was frosting cupcakes, his sleeves rolled up, concentration written on his face. For a moment, it was like seeing the little boy who used to sit on that same counter, legs swinging, stealing cookie dough when he thought I wasn't looking. Mom, he said suddenly, breaking the silence, did I make a fool of myself? I looked up from the ledger. No, sweetheart, you made a mistake. That's what love does sometimes, he sighed. I should have listened to you. No, I said gently. You should have listened to yourself. The part of you that hesitated, You ignored it because you wanted to believe her. He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. I did love her, you know. Or maybe I just loved the idea of her. I smiled sadly. Sometimes we fall in love with what we hope someone will be, not who they really are. He wiped his hands on a towel and came over to hug me. For the first time in months, I felt him breathe freely again. One afternoon, while sorting old papers in the bakery's office, I found a small envelope tucked behind the accounting files. It was addressed to me in Maya's handwriting. For a long moment, I debated opening it. My hands trembled slightly as I slid a finger under the seal. Inside was a short note. Mrs. Cole, I know you think the worst of me, and maybe you're right, but I never meant to hurt Daniel. I just wanted a chance for my son to have a better life than I did. I made choices I can't undo, and I'll live with that. But please, don't let him hate me. I don't want Ethan to grow up thinking his mother was a monster. Maya sat there for a long while, staring at the words. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for understanding, a small, fragile difference, but one that mattered. Maybe she'd lied out of fear. Maybe she'd manipulated out of desperation. Maybe she'd simply been lost. I folded the letter and slipped it into a drawer. Some things don't need to be burned or displayed. They just need to be put away, where they can't keep hurting you anymore. Spring came again. The bakery smelled like cinnamon and butter, and the morning sun poured through the front windows. Life was finding its rhythm again. Daniel had started seeing an old friend from college, Emma. She was kind, quiet, and had a laugh that filled the whole room. He didn't rush it this time. He just let things happen naturally. And for the first time, I saw my son laugh without guilt. One evening, he came into the living room carrying a small box. Mom, he said, sitting beside me, I wanted to show you something. Inside was a gold bracelet, delicate, simple, engraved with the initials EC. I was thinking of sending it, he said, to Ethan. I know he's not my child, but I don't want him growing up thinking everyone hates him. My throat tightened. I looked at him, this man who'd been betrayed, humiliated, and yet still found kindness in his heart. That's very generous of you, I whispered. Your father would be proud. He smiled softly. I learned it from you. I shook my head. No, son, you learned it because, even after everything, you still believe in love. That night, after he went to bed, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The crickets sang their evening song, and the air was thick with the scent of lilacs. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel sad, just calm. It hit me then that forgiveness isn't about saying what happened was okay. It's about choosing not to carry it anymore. Maya had taken enough from us. I wasn't going to give her my peace, too. I whispered a quiet prayer for Daniel, for Ethan, and even for her, because we all do foolish things when we're scared of losing love. A few weeks later, I received a small postcard in the mail. No return address. Just a picture of a seaside town and 3 words written on the back. We're doing okay. No signature, but I didn't need one. I smiled, slipped the card into the same drawer as her letter, and closed it for good. The bakery thrived again. People came in for the pastries, but they stayed for the warmth, for the laughter that had slowly returned. Daniel and Emma eventually married, not in secret, not with fancy announcements, just a simple ceremony in our backyard. When he took her hand, I saw no lies, no fear, just quiet, honest love. And when they asked me to hold their newborn daughter months later, my hands trembled again, but this time, not from shock, from gratitude. That's the thing about family. It breaks, it rebuilds. It surprises you in ways you never expect. I learned that day, standing under the afternoon sun with my granddaughter in my arms, that sometimes betrayal isn't the end of your story. It's just the moment you learn what love really costs. Because forgiveness doesn't erase the past, it redeems it. And though I'll never forget what happened that Sunday lunch, I've stopped letting it define the rest of my days. When people tell me time heals all wounds, I smile politely, because I've learned it isn't time that heals, it's truth. The day I stopped asking why they hid that wedding from me, and started asking what I was meant to learn from it, that's when I began to heal. I learned that family isn't about loyalty on paper, or whose name sits on the business shares. It's about integrity, honesty, and the quiet moments when you choose love, even when it's undeserved. My son made a mistake. His wife made a worse one, but I've made mine too, holding on too tight, loving too fiercely, and forgetting that children, no matter how old, still have to find their own way to wisdom. I still think about Maya sometimes, not with anger anymore, but with a kind of bittersweet understanding. She came into our lives like a storm, broke things, scattered truths, but in the end, she cleared the air. She reminded me that love without honesty will always rot from the inside out. Now, every time I open the bakery door in the morning, smell the sugar and coffee and hear that soft chime, I remember, this business, this home, this family, they were never built on money, they were built on resilience. And resilience, my dear, is what keeps us standing after every betrayal. So if you're listening to this, and you've ever felt like someone you loved turned their back on you, remember this: their betrayal might break your heart, but it can't break your worth. You will rebuild, you will rise, and one day, the same silence that once haunted you will become the peace you prayed for. Would you have forgiven her, or walked away? Tell me in the comments. And if this story spoke to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like mine, because sometimes the hardest stories to tell are the ones that help someone else finally heal. End of full script. 6,000 for 100 words total. Would you like me to create a YouTube SEO package title, description, tags, thumbnail text, and keyword optimized hashtags for this story next, in voices of Auntie May style? You said give me short summary of script. Chat said here's a short, cinematic style summary of the full story script. Story summary: my daughter-in-law told me they got married yesterday, and I was the only one who didn't know when Margaret, a widowed bakery owner, attends what she thinks is a casual family lunch. She's blindsided. Her son Daniel and his girlfriend Maya announced they secretly married the day before. Everyone calls her grandma, though she's never met a grandchild. Confused and hurt, Margaret begins to suspect there's more behind the sudden marriage. As small clues surface: strange paperwork, hidden photos of a little boy, and Maya's odd interest in the family business. Margaret uncovers the truth. Maya has a secret child named Ethan and plans to use her marriage to Daniel to gain control of the bakery her late husband built. The confrontation shatters the family. Maya's deception is exposed at a family dinner, leading to a painful unraveling of trust. Daniel is devastated. His marriage collapses, but over time, Margaret helps her son rebuild, not just the business, but his sense of self. Months later, Margaret receives a quiet letter from Maya, admitting her lies but revealing she only wanted a better life for her son. In an act of grace, Margaret forgives, not for Maya's sake, but for her own peace. By the story's end, Daniel finds love again, the bakery thrives, and Margaret learns a powerful truth: betrayal can break your heart, but forgiveness is what frees it.